Here at the Narracourt sale yards, like all livestock sales, sellers walk away knowing exactly how much they earned for each and every kilo. But how much each kilo cost to produce, well, that's a different story. It's not like the selling agent hands you a bit of paper after the sale with it neatly underlined. Craig Brewin manages Maranoa Downs just outside Narracourt, and today he's sitting down with local farm management consultant Ken Solly to work out his per kilo cost of production using a cost of production calculator available from the MLA website.
We've got all the cost categories here, but we've got to get our production right first. So could you give us the cow numbers, all the stock numbers as we go forward?
Like, I mean, if you had asked me the question, what does it cost you to produce a kilo of beef, if you didn't know anything about it, you'd think a farmer should be able to answer that question, but I don't think there would be many farmers that could tell you off the top of their head what it does cost them to produce a kilo of beef.
The calculator takes data from Maranoa Downs on production, livestock enterprise costs, labour and overheads, including pasture costs, and delivers both a cost of production per kilo for the business and a picture of how it compares with others across southern Australia.
Now we're in a position where we can move forward and start to look at the individual costs now that we've got the production right.
The critical element about this in the first instance isn't necessarily the exact cents per kilo, but it's to determine what range you're in, whether you're efficient or inefficient or an average producer. Then from one year to the next to be able to compare your own cost of production against yourself, and then if you do have other like producers in your area, we'll get a handle on the differences and to be able to drill down within a business and try and identify other systems that are actually doing it better than you and perhaps bring that back into your own business.
Now, it'd be a mistake to think that the aim of the whole exercise is simply to cut costs. That's just not true. It's about figuring out a way to increase the amount of beef you produce for every dollar it costs you. And sometimes, but not always, the way to do that is to increase your total costs, but for an even greater increase in total production. Here at Maranoa Downs, well, the exercise has highlighted the cost per kilo of supplementary feeding and confirmed that the extra investment in pastures that Craig had already begun is a sensible step.
In 2006 we had to start feeding stock in around about August, September, which you'd expect the place to still be green then. So that put a lot of strain on our cost of production in terms of cents per kilo. But what we're trying to do is grow deep-rooted perennials like lucerne and chicory, and we get an earlier start with higher quality, and then we get probably an extra month to 5 weeks at the end of the season, which nearly, like if you add them both together, you get an extra 2 months worth of feed that you don't have to feed, and your stock is still maintaining or gaining weight.
MLA's cost of production calculators, and there's one for lamb as well as beef, incorporate benchmarking data collected over a decade by agribusiness consultants Holmes, Sackett and Associates.
The key word is benchmark. I mean, there's no greater tool and quite a confronting science to be benchmarked and to be able to compare yourself sort of anonymously with your peers and fellow regional producers is a confronting science, but one that gives you something tremendous to operate from, and it gives you a baseline.
That benchmarking data shows higher cost producers can outlay close to 3 times as much as others to produce each kilo.
The studies that we've seen indicate that the most efficient producers have got their production in the southern areas, particularly down to nearly $1 a kilo, and then the bottom of the range is nearly 3 times that amount. So it really highlights the importance. It highlights the great variabilities around on-farm production, on-farm management, and we really encourage producers to translate all their production costs into a kilo rate, because that's after all the product that's being sold.
I think the journey's more important than the destination. You know, as we're working through it, we're analysing the costs, individual costs, and we're making a positive decision about each of those inputs.
The cost production calculator isn't one of those things that you can just come up with an answer in 10 minutes. You've got to put a bit of work into it and find the real data. Now we know what it does cost us to produce a kilo of beef, and we've got something to work with. Like, if you haven't got anything to work with, where do you start, where do you finish?